the chair of the House Budget Committee yesterday, Paul Ryan, who believes and preaches that the war on poverty was a failure because there are still poor people out there. Duh, right? Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot about the perception and the sort of perspective that many on the Republican side bring to this whole conversation. Number one, I wish we had had a war on poverty. We had a series of battles, but we had far too many retreats. When Lyndon Johnson articulated the war on poverty in, 1964, 1965, had we maintained the effort, not gone through a whole series, think about the 1980s, a whole series of initiatives that really undermine the safety net, maybe we would have been able to be more successful. But the truth of the matter is, we've had success. We have lifted many people out of poverty. One of the things that we are working on right now is
Social Security,
Medicare,
Medicaid.
but even unemployment, even federal unemployment.
Right.
It's kept a lot of people out of poverty.
So yesterday, he is on a show on the same time as we are. The Bill Bennett, conservative Bill Bennett, former Secretary of Education, his radio show, and he says, now, here's the problem. The problem basically is lazy inner city men who just don't want to work. But I don't want to put words in his mouth. Let Paul Ryan do it. Listen up, Congressman, get your take on the other side.
We have got this tailspin of culture in our inner cities in particular of men not working and just generations of men not even thinking about working or learning the value and the culture of work. And so there's a real culture problem here that has to be dealt with. Everybody's got to get involved. So this is what we talk about when we talk about civil society. If you're driving from the suburb, to the sports arena downtown by these blighted neighborhoods, you can't just say, I'm paying my taxes, government's going to fix that. You need to get involved. You need to get involved yourself, whether through a good mentor program or some religious charity, whatever it is, to make a difference. And that's how we help resuscitate our culture.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we all should get involved. But the idea of blaming it on generations of men standing around on street corners who just don't want to work.
Right. I mean, it takes me to a conversation that I had about 6 months ago with a group of 10 and 11-year-old kids in one of the inner city neighborhoods in my hometown of Flint. They have all the optimism, all the energy you could ever imagine. These kids are not born lazy, as was referred to in some of the commentary around Mr. Ryan's statement. They are in a situation where there are no ladders of opportunity for them. All these kids, they have the same capabilities when they're born. But if you're in one of those inner city neighborhoods, we have to ask ourselves, how is it that we allow that condition to exist that is so depressing and provides so little opportunity? And it's a reflection or a manifestation of bad public policy at the federal level, state level, that we allow those communities to deteriorate, and then sit back and, as Paul Ryan is doing, sort of meditate on how it is that these young people have very little opportunity and are not able to find a decent job. They're consigned to going to schools that are substandard with very little technology, and the walls are falling around them. You live in housing which is surrounded by vacant and abandoned blight, have infrastructure that's crumbling, have virtually no new reinvestment in their neighborhood, and then it's their fault that they don't have an opportunity to fully participate in the economy. No, Mr. Ryan, have a look in the mirror. It's federal policy and other policy that has caused this situation.
Yeah, and then look at, as you alluded to earlier, so they won't raise the minimum wage. They won't extend unemployment insurance. They cut food stamps. They cut Head Start. They cut all these programs.
Training.
They cut job training.
Right.
They oppose every jobs proposal that has come up here. The stimulus, none of them voted for it. You go on, and then they say it's their fault that they don't have jobs.
Right. I mean, they should embrace, and the president proposed it, Project Rebuild. You want to do something about the situation in these communities? The president proposed a robust urban reinvestment strategy. If he's honestly concerned about the lives and the trajectory of inner city youth who become the young males that he's referring to, I mean, I will stipulate to the fact that there are far too many young males in America's cities who don't have work. Let's just acknowledge that's the case.
Yeah.
How they got there is if somehow they have made a conscious choice that, life's better standing here on the street corner than it could be, being involved in some meaningful work.
It's not that they don't want a job or that they don't want a paycheck, right? Or don't want a better life.
But just think how cynical and condescending that sort of a comment is.
I would also say how racist that sort of a comment is.
Well, there's no question.
Because when he's talking about men, culture, inner city culture, the whole thing, I mean, those are code words. As Congresswoman Barbara Lee said yesterday, those are code words for black people.
Well, and here's the thing. It's so cynical that not only is it a demonstration of a complete misunderstanding of the lives of the people that he's referring to, but it's also intended to paint a picture of everybody who might receive any sort of federal support for happen to be down on their luck, unemployment, whatever it might be, SNAP benefits, to paint a picture that engenders in the listener or in the viewer certain connotations which make it very difficult for them to relate to the condition that those people are in. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a master at
welfare
this.
queens.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We mentioned a little earlier, one of the programs that they have refused to support, and this is something you've been taking the lead on, is extending unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed, which, by the way, already includes a work requirement.
Includes a work requirement.
Which he says, this is the answer. We have to have a work requirement for all these programs. Doesn't he realize they already exist?
And this is for people who are seeking work, too.
Yeah.
This is not for those whom honestly I've never met, but the description of somebody sort of sitting at home on the couch receiving extended unemployment benefits, first of all, it's fallacy. You can't do that. You can't live for the 37 weeks or additional time that you'd get out of unemployment and then just sort of click it into gear and say, okay, now I'm going to go look for a job. Every single person, and this is without exception, that I've spoken to that has lost their extended unemployment benefit or was benefiting from it in the first place would in a second trade that situation for a job that allows them the dignity and sort of the meaning of work in their life and a paycheck. I mean, the notion that this whole narrative that they're trying to spin out, that this is a hammock, not a safety net. This is the way they describe it. It's just a paper over their ideology that government ought not have any role in creating any sort of equality.
Now,
in our
you've been
society.
pushing to get a vote on extending the unemployment benefits. Where are you on this?
Well, it's tough. I mean, right now, unfortunately, Speaker Boehner seems to take the position that it's the Senate that always has to act first. Now, I've sort of been an observer of Washington. I've only been in Congress a little over a year. But I've seen how this place is supposed to work, and I've never seen the House sit around waiting for the Senate to do its work before we take anything up. But that seems to be the Speaker's point of view. We have initiated a discharge petition, very difficult to get Republicans to sign on. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get this extension to the floor for a vote. So if we get all the Democrats, we need 17, 18 Republicans to be willing to walk across the aisle and put the interests of the thousands and thousands of their constituents that don't have unemployment compensation, that are losing their houses, losing their cars, not able to feed their families, put them ahead of their fealty to John Boehner. And if they do so, we'll get a vote, and I would bet we would get an overwhelming majority among Democrats and Republicans to pass this thing.
No doubt about it. You've pointed out there are a lot of veterans, too, who are caught up in this, correct?
That's the interesting thing. And it's an important point to make, but it's a important point to explain. 200,000 of the 2 million unemployed that have lost their federal unemployment benefits, the extended unemployment benefits, 200,000 are veterans. So I would ask Paul Ryan, as he sits back and meditates on what the cause of unemployment or the lack of opportunity for these young people might be, does he really think that somebody who put on the uniform of the United States of America, went overseas to some land that they never heard of, and put their lives at risk, that those people would prefer to be on unemployment, that they're lazy? They weren't lazy when they put on the uniform. And I tell you, those folks have a lot more in their character than most of the folks that I deal with on Capitol Hill. And for them to be so condescending and diminishing of somebody who is simply looking for a little help to get from their last job to their next job. And here's the point. The 200,000 veterans, they're not an exception to the 2 million. Just an example.